shirk their responsibility of voting in person.
Let's talk about what's going on in this here country. We got the story from NPR, from Whammoo. Biden criticizes UltraMAGA Republicans as inflation rises. So basically, he does this speech and he's like, look, there's 2 reasons for inflation. The unprecedented pandemic. It's like, I can give you that, right? Putin's war. Inflation was happening before Putin's war, but it maybe kicked it up a little bit. I mean, the food costs and everything. And then he goes on to say, but the UltraMAGA have no solution. They're going to raise your taxes, cut your pay, and make all the problems. And I'm like, dude, the UltraMAGA was 3 years of prosperity. The best numbers of our lives, so saith Jim Cramer. And then the pandemic happened and things got kind of wonky. So I'll give that to Joe Biden when he's like, the pandemic caused us problems. Sure. But, I mentioned it earlier. A year ago, I was like, guys, food shortages are coming. It's going to get bad. If dude on internet complaining can talk about the food shortages and the president could not do anything to plan for or alleviate this, then either he is completely incapable of doing anything about it, and he should probably say that I can't do anything. Sorry, you're out of food. Or he just didn't do what he could have done because he's incompetent and he could have done something about it. Now let me show you what we're dealing with. Gas prices at record highs. Oof. Perhaps when you have gas prices setting records, you shouldn't shut down pipelines and you shouldn't ban fracking. But, this is the game he's played. He was very happy to help Russia's gas pipeline pre-war. Meanwhile, shutting down the Keystone XL and banning fracking on public lands. And then he says, nothing I did caused this. And it's like, well, at least a little bit, dude. Come on, take some responsibility. Now you have this story from the AP. Parents hunting for baby formula as shortage spans U.S. So this is becoming a very serious issue. I can only say this. If the president is completely incapable of doing anything about this, then he needs to come out and tell the American people. He should have told them a year ago. There is no policy and nothing I can do to help you. Have a nice day. Of course, he wouldn't, because it's not true. The reality is Joe Biden is just really bad at what he does.
And also, if there's nothing they can do about it, they at least have a responsibility to try to warn the American people so that they can prepare on their own. I understand that's difficult because there's an argument to be made certain people are going to start panicking, but people should at least know so that they have a fighting chance.
I just think it's funny that when I do the shout outs for Safe and Ready Meals, the emergency food stuff, which is like, it's been kind of a lot in these past several months. It is a weird phenomena among urban liberals where they mock the idea of buying emergency supplies. And now how many of them are going to the store and they're like, oh, there's no food. No food. What do you do?
I get really bothered when they blame the pandemic for this stuff. Because I feel like it was the response to the pandemic, however you want to define that, the response to the virus, the shutdown that really caused this, not the virus itself. People responded in a way where they shut down businesses across the world for like a year or something crazy.
And now Bill Gates has come out and reversed the entirety of his position. Bill Gates is spreading dangerous disinformation that you are not allowed to say on YouTube. Yeah. That's right. Bill Gates claimed, can you believe this? That COVID is like the flu? No, Bill Gates. YouTube will ban you if you say that.
UltraMAGA got to him.
Yeah. UltraMAGA
pilled. What if Bill Gates did just walk out one day with like a MAGA hat on and he was like, I've been convinced, guys.
Yeah.
It
took me some time.
Red Pill Gates.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's with
Bill
us.
Gates.
He's back.
Well, it's so typical though, right? Because, all right, so for a very long time, the left's argument was if you cut even 1 penny of social welfare spending, people are going to die, you monster. And then they said, yeah, we could just shut down the entire economy for like a year and a half. That'll be fine. No one's going to get hurt if we do that. Well, now we're starting to see in a much more plain way the ramifications of that, and it's going to get really ugly. And they're never going to take responsibility for this. They're going to claim that this was just because of COVID and ignore the fact that it was their insane, disproportionate response to it, which failed to take into account the unintended consequences.
It's just funny. I'm imagining, Joe Biden answering for all of the failures of his presidency. And at first he's like impassioned, like, look, it was COVID, unprecedented COVID. And by the time they get to like the 87th failure, he's like, that one was... gnomes, I guess. I don't know. Somebody stole my socks. Next.
Slipped in the shower, man.
Slipped in the shower. Grabbed the dog.
Major Biden's fault.
Yeah.
Major Biden.
Yeah.
He's slipped in the shower.
Also, I mean, this is. I just want to mention this is, and it's insane to even have to explain this, right? But this is a consequence of putting people in charge of making decisions who will pay literally no price if those decisions turn out to be a disaster for somebody else, or if the effects of those decisions turn out to be a disaster for everybody else.
Look where we are. Matthew was just explaining how these Democrats' offices are all closed. They're literally on vacation, not doing their jobs. How much do you want to bet people like Swalwell? He's like he's going to be at like a Capitol Grill in DC or some like Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And then, he's talking and they're laughing and he's like, waiter, another bottle of the Dom, please. And then his phone goes, his watch goes, and he goes, oh, I better tweet so people think that I'm actually involved in politics. Republicans want to ban interracial marriage. Send. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah, we were golfing.
Fired off a banger, yeah.
Firing off a banger. Like, they're checked out, dude.
What a hot take.
They're all checked out.
I have a great example of that, actually. The Sean Patrick Maloney, who's a Democrat in New York, who chairs the House Democrats campaign committee. He went to France for a wedding at a billionaire's chateau, and while he was there, he said, "Mask up. We're all in this together. We have to defeat the virus." He's literally partying maskless at a French billionaire's chateau, defying a State Department travel warning against going to France.
Brilliant.
This is literally liberal governance. It's the classic rules for me, but not for thee. But one of the sort of storylines that I covered a lot was Democrat mask mandate and hypocrisy, because there are never-ending examples of this, but this was one of the most ridiculous.
I'd give a shout-out to Ted Cruz when that freeze happened, and he gets on a plane to go fly to, where was he going?
Cancun.
Mexico.
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh, it's my daughter's. I would have respected it, what he did, if he just owned up to it and said, I'm going on vacation. That's it. That's happening. Have a nice day. Instead, he made it seem like, just like own it, dude. Look, if you want to go on vacation, I got no problem with that. What do you think your federally elected representative is going to do for these local issues? I certainly think it would have been better if he was there for his constituents. But I think the bigger issue I have with him is Republicans aren't the ones screaming about you wearing masks and not traveling. It's the left who is saying, travel should be restricted and you should wear a mask and do all these things. So when Gavin Newsom says everybody has to wear a mask and then goes to that French restaurant not wearing a mask, we're like, hypocrite. When Ted Cruz is like, if he was just like, I'm going on vacation, I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I guess, sure. Instead, he's just like, oh, it was my daughter's and I'm coming back.
You make me think about how you were just talking before the show about the, the crack kits?
The Biden crack pipes, yeah.
The Biden administration gave out these
pipes.
safe usage kits or whatever they're called specifically. And
safe smoking kits.
And then they were like, oh, there's crack pipes in these safe smoking kits? And they're like, no. Biden's administration is like, no, there's no crack pipes. But there were.
And then what happened was behind the scenes, like, quick, get rid of the crack pipes.
Yeah. And the people are like, well, if there's not crack pipes, then it's not a safe smoking kit because they're going to end up using aluminum. There's supposed to be crack pipes in there. Why are there no crack pipes? Turns out they were all along and they just lied.
Correct.
Just like Ted Cruz on vacation. Like, you don't need to lie to save face here. We're all in this together. Maybe sometimes they think they do.
Look, Ted Cruz going on vacation is not that big of a deal.
It was a national news story.
It might look, if I was an elected representative and there was a disaster in my district, I wouldn't go to Cancun. But him going on vacation, it's kind of like, well, that's kind of a, stupid thing to do, I guess. That's about it. When they realized giving out crack pipes was like not a popular thing to do, they just lied and said, no, we're not. And you're like, safe smoking kits have crack pipes. No, they don't. No, they don't. And then the best part was when these left-wing groups, when they said there's no crack pipes, left-wing groups came out and they were like, why are you taking the crack pipes? And I'm just like, dude, if they came out and said, yes, there are crack pipes in the safe smoking kits. Why? Because they're clean and we're trying to limit the spread of disease. Then when someone says, don't you think supplying these could increase the amount of, increase the likelihood someone does smoke crack? The answer is it could, I guess.
I want to touch on that, though, for a second. So these are government-funded crack pipes. And one of them, so I went to 3 locations, one in D.C., one in Baltimore, and one in Richmond. None of them have any effort at prevention of saying, maybe don't do this. The Richmond one, actually, when we went there with my colleague, he and I got there. It was a van in a hotel parking lot, and they saw 2 of us walking up, and they said, well, we only have one more crack pipe, but we can give you guys meth pipes and also cocaine snorting kits. And we said, sure, we will take these things.
We'll take all 3.
And they gave us a brochure, and they said, we're an organization dedicated to ending the racist war on drugs. There was nothing about how, maybe you should not do this. If you're having a problem, you should call these numbers. But the Biden administration, after we reported on how the Biden administration is funding crack pipes, they went all out against the Free Beacon. Normally this would be called an attack on the First Amendment, attack on the free press. And then they colluded with fact checkers. So I'm actually way more black-pilled on fact checkers. I think these are some of the most useless people.
They're incredibly useful
to the
regime.
Yes, correct. Yeah, good point. But they are some of the worst. They couldn't make it in real journalism, so all they do is regurgitate talking points from the left to get articles removed from social media.
But I don't think they're journalists.
Yes.
They're Democrat operatives.
Correct.
You know, it's like, what was it? There was, DeSantis said something. What was it? It was a fact check where he said, 60% of college debt is held by people with graduate degrees. And PolitiFact said it was fake news. But the source from DeSantis was the Poynter Institute, which is like the parent company of PolitiFact or something like that. And they were like, he misunderstood. We actually said something slightly different. And it was like, I can't remember exactly what they said, but DeSantis simplified the point, which they said mostly false. This is what they do. The famous line from Bernie and Trump. Trump said something like there's 50% unemployment in the inner city, and they said mostly false. Then Bernie said the exact same thing and said mostly true.
Yeah, right. Maybe not and maybe mean the same thing.
This actually also happened with Tom Cotton when he wrote that stimulus checks would be received by the Boston Marathon bomber. The Washington Post ruled this false. And then after it was proven true that literally Dzhokhar Tsarnaev received a $1,400 stimmy, they then said, this is still one Pinocchio.
Wow.
Like, we know this is true. So Cotton's office went back and said, it's still false.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.